I am speaking for the first time. Let me start by congratulating you, Madam President, and the other officers of the committee for having been elected to preside over this historic session. It is historic as we are conducting the committee's business online for the first time. I have no doubt that your collective experience will ensure that the business is conducted smoothly and, and that your conclusion to each of the cases will be fair. My delegation therefore looks forward to a focused discussion and to a fair conclusion that takes into account the terms of listing, its submissions, as well as objectives, and constructive interventions by members that elect to take part in this discussion. It is important to note that the credibility of the supervisory machinery rests on fair conclusions. Predetermined and misdirected conclusions are a danger to the mechanism which is at the heart of the ILO. We would like conclusions that are embraced by the examined governments. It is self-defeating to have conclusions that may be ridiculed. With your permission, Madam President, let me say a few words about the criteria used in coming up with this list of 19. My delegation believes that the listing criteria, together with fair discussions and fair conclusions, speak to the credibility of this august committee. At this session, 3 countries from Southern Africa, one of the 5 sub-regions of Africa, are lined up for discussion. One would want to question the criteria used to list 3 countries from the same sub-region, albeit under different conventions. My delegation is of the view that the geographical spread criterion was not applied within Africa as a region. Furthermore, the 3 cannot be regarded as cases of serious violations nor situations that require urgent attention. Madam President, the 3 were not the only countries provisionally listed under fundamental and priority conventions. The final list lacks a balance between developing and developed countries. I can go on and on citing and analyzing all the remaining criteria listed in the document KM/D1 dated 13 May 2021. The long and short of it is that the final list lacks a balance of the criteria. One would have expected at most 1 country from Southern Africa to be discussed at this session of the International Labour Conference, especially with a final list of 19 countries instead of 24. Certainly, the parties responsible for listing need to pay full attention to the reforms of the working methods of this committee that were agreed to in 2015. Zimbabwe is not against the mechanism, but it is after objectivity and transparency. These are the pillars of a credible mechanism. Collectively, we should strengthen the mechanism for it to remain relevant. Madam President, let me turn to the issues raised by the Committee of Experts concerning Zimbabwe under Convention 105 on abolition of forced labor. I wish to start by pointing out that there is no forced labor in Zimbabwe, be it in the prisons, in the workplaces, and in the society at large. The Committee of Experts has never established that there is forced labor in the prisons of Zimbabwe. The rehabilitative labor of the prison system in Zimbabwe is consistent with Constitution, international and regional best practices. Offenders are sentenced to imprisonment on the presumption that the term of imprisonment is adequate punishment. The Committee of Experts argues that penalties of imprisonment, including compulsory labor, under the Prison Act and its regulations may be imposed under circumstances falling within Article 1A of the Convention in the Public Order and Security Act and Criminal Law Codification and Reform Act, Chapter 9.23. I wish to point out that the Public Order and Security Act was repealed in 2019. I will come back to it later on. Furthermore, I wish to submit that the proposition being advanced by the Committee of Experts is unfortunately based on the submission made by Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, which link the realm of freedom of association and the prison system. The Committee of Experts cites unfounded fears expressed by the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions that 20 of its members who were arrested in 2018 were to face forced labor in prison if they were to be convicted. Madam President, the sentencing of prisoners to labor was outlawed in Zimbabwe's jurisdiction. Imprisonment for violating a statutory provision cannot be interpreted to mean forced labor. Such an imprisonment is in fact a criminal punishment that is in sync with the criminal justice system. At any rate, the members who were feared to be subjected to that, to what the committee terms forced labor, were acquitted by the courts in 2019 before it met to come up with the report which is the subject of this discussion. Madam President, in its report, the Committee of Experts also made reference to the repealed Public Order and Security Act and its successor, the Maintenance of Peace and Order Act, which is called MOPA in short. That was gazetted in November 2019. Unfortunately, the bulk of what is in the report of the experts is an analysis of the Maintenance of Peace and Order Bill, which is now an act which was submitted to it by the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions. Furthermore, the Committee of Experts cites in its report the comments on the bill made in September 2019 by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the rights to freedom and peaceful assembly and of association. Ironically, in the same report, the Committee of Experts acknowledges the statement by the government that the Public Order and Security Act was replaced by MOPA. One wonders the logic of the Committee of Experts in proceeding to analyze a bill when an act was or is already in place. Alternatively, why should it include an analysis of bill in its supplementary report in which it is making reference to an act? Madam President, it is given that the Committee of Experts is still to analyze MOPA. Hence, it becomes an academic exercise for us to dwell on provisions that were in a bill. However, let me point out that Section 9 of the MOPA explicitly exempts meetings convened by a registered trade union for bona fide trade union purposes for the conduct of business in accordance with the Labour Act, Chapter 28.01, from the requirements stipulated under Section 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the same Act, which include notifying police about public gatherings being planned. Last but not least, Madam President, the Committee of Experts was informed some time ago about the agenda to remove from the Labour Act reference to penal sanctions involving compulsory labor as a punishment for having participated in an illegal strike. This is being done so that the Labour Act is in conformity with Convention 105, and more importantly, for it to be in sync with the criminal justice system. Sections 102B, 104, 2 to 3, 109, 1 to 2, and 122 of the Labour Act, Chapter 28.01, will be repealed. The Committee of Experts acknowledges this aspect and also the totality of the labor law reform. However, It regrets the lack of progress. Let me point out that the labor reform has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite the pandemic, the labor amendment bill is now before the cabinet system. I thank you, Madam President.